Today is the second Sunday after Easter. Today we have the story in our Gospel from John chapter 20 and verse 19, where Jesus stands and comes among his disciples. We hear that it's about a week after the resurrection had taken place, and the disciples were in lockdown. They had locked themselves in the upper room out of fear of the Jewish rulers, who they thought may come and imprison them, possibly even crucifying them. And so they find themselves behind locked doors, in fear and anxiety. And I think as people we can so relate to that. While we are caught in lockdown, we also find ourselves behind locked doors with fear and anxiety. But interestingly enough, we find that in the situation, Jesus, in spite of those locked doors, enters in. He makes himself known and he makes himself present among them. And the very first thing he says is, "Peace be with you." Jesus offers them his peace amidst the fear and anxiety, the dangers that had befallen them. And in a real way, there's a lesson for us in that we can know Christ and his peace and his presence. Maybe we can know his peace because he is present with us. And then he shows them his wounds, his hands and his side, as a way of demonstrating that he's not an apparition or a ghost or anything after that style, but it is Christ who had triumphed over both sin and death. And as a result, these early disciples, being empowered with the knowledge and the assurance of his presence, that he is alive, then will at a later stage will exit out of that lockdown situation, and without fear will proclaim the resurrected Christ all over the known world. This wonderful story that tells about a well-known actor who was demonstrating his ability and his skill. And while he was doing this, he invited the audience at one point to ask him to actually simply recite some famous lines that he can show his abilities and his oratorial skills. In the presence, or one of the people present was an elderly clergy person, who then used the opportunity to ask him if he would recite Psalm 23, that much loved psalm. But the actor then said he would, on condition that the clergy person also, after he had demonstrated his skill, would recite it, to which he agreed. And at the end of the actor's recital, there was huge applause at his ability and his skill to so beautifully articulate word for word and line by line. And he met with a standing ovation. Then he turned to the clergy person and invited the clergy person to do the same. But the old clergyman got up and he began to say that wonderful prayer. And he went through it line by line. But as he spoke, it was tears that began to well up in the people's eyes as his words touched their heart. And at the end of his recital, the actor walked over to him and put his arms, or his one arm, around the old clergyman and said, "My voice had carried to your ears. However, the clergyman's words reached your heart, because I know the skill of words, but this old man knows the shepherd. And it's amazing how that story reminds us about not just knowing skills and how to do and abilities, but knowing the Saviour, the shepherd himself. And that makes all the difference, doesn't it? As we go through this time during our lockdown, there's an assurance that comes from knowing the shepherd, not just the fancy words or the prayers, but the shepherd himself, who leads us and guides us, who makes himself known, who assures us of his presence. Because a time will come, and at the right time, we will be invited to go out and to demonstrate that love and that presence that Christ has shown us. And so during this time of lockdown, I pray that you will be blessed, that you will be encouraged, and use the time to get to know the shepherd.